For anyone on a tighter budget, you know it's not super easy to get into the 400 horsepower club.
Let me in! Let me in!
Since 2000, there have been so many different trims and engines that it's easy to get them all mixed up. The pre-facelift 5th gen Camaros alone had the 1LS, 2LS, 1LT, 2LT, 1SS, 2SS, and ZL1 for trims. And for V8 engines, you had a choice of the L99, LS3, or LSA.
It's like he's trying to speak to me, I know it!
Well, to help with the confusion, today I'll be telling you the 9 cheapest American cars from after 2000 with 400 horsepower stock. Let's get into it. As a disclaimer, I don't have unrealistic BS prices for these. I kinda hate when there's articles and they throw around stupid numbers like, oh, number 8 is a C7 Corvette for $20,000. These are just average prices based on the stuff right now within like 75 miles of where I am. None of them were in accidents or had crazy high miles, but they also weren't private sales, so you could maybe find something cheaper. Also, I put my favorite ones towards the end, but they're all pretty good. Without rambling on anymore, the first one is the Chrysler 300 SRT8. These were made for the Mopar fans looking for something a little more sophisticated.
You like jazz?
But they're still packing 425 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. Considering they weigh over 4,100 pounds, hitting 0 to 60 in a 4.7 isn't too terrible, and you'll be comfortable while doing it. Admittedly, this is one of the harder ones to find for sale, but it'll probably cost you between 15 and 18 grand. Next up is the 05 and 06 Pontiac GTO. They made these in 04 as well, but those had the LS1 making only 350 horsepower. When they upgraded to the LS2, they had 400 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. I have seen a couple people get lucky finding some V8 GTO for less than $11,000, which is still a pretty good price even for the LS1s. But the LS2s seem to normally cost between $17,000 and $21,000. Whenever I've seen these at a meet, they really have a very raw sound and almost modernizes a classic muscle car sound. It's really hard to explain, and that probably didn't make any sense at all.
Nope.
Basically, they just seem to always sound really mean. Alright, so the first car was a more sophisticated Mopar, but maybe you want something LS powered instead. Well, the next car is a CTS-V, and if you want GM class, you basically need one of these. Sadly, you probably can't afford a Gen 3 with the supercharged LT4, and even the second gens are pretty pricey. The good news is that the first gens have 400 horsepower and torque from an LS6 or LS2, and they only cost between $15,000 and $22,000.
Not bad, not bad.
The 04s and 5s had the LS6, and the 6s and 7s had the LS2, but interestingly, they were only made with manual transmissions. Overall, the 300s are alright, but if I were to choose one of the cheap SRT8s, I'd take the 06 to 2010 Charger version. The back is kinda meh, but the front has a ton of modding potential. The 6.1 liter Hemi V8s in these make the same 425 horsepower as the Chrysler, and they usually cost between $16,000 and $19,000. The ones made in 2011 and after that had the 392 Hemis making $470, but they cost a lot more, so sadly, I couldn't put them in the list. Next up is the 2010 to 2013 Camaro SS.
What's the S stand for?
On my world, it means suck.
These actually had two different engines depending on what transmission they were in. The manuals got a normal LS3, which made 426 horsepower, but the autos got an L99, which is basically the same engine with slightly reduced power at 400. The benefit was that the L99s could deactivate 4 cylinders for better gas mileage. I feel like that'd probably be more of a pain than anything every time you're trying to beat on it, but for daily drivability, it'd be pretty nice to have. Now the next one is another SRT8, but I promise this is the last one. I kinda had to get them all in.
3! Take it or leave it!
This is the Challenger SRT8 made between 08 and 2010 with the same engine as the other two. These to me are just a little too bland looking, which is why I'd take the Charger instead. If I wanted a Challenger, I'd probably take a slightly newer RT over one of these, but that's just my preference, so to anyone else, this might be your favorite one. The third to final car is the 2011 to 14 Mustang GTs. They all had 5.0s, but the 11s and 12s made 412 horsepower, and the 13s and 14s had 420 ponies under the hood.
But anywho,
I would say stock for stock, the later ones look better, but with the right setup, I say the 11s and 12s can be one of the meanest looking Mustangs. These are also the third fastest on the list with a 4.6 or 4.5 0 to 60 depending on what transmission you have. For the second to last car, we've got the C5 Corvette Z06s, but only the ones made between 02 and 04. These had 405 horsepower from an LS6, but the ones before those years had only 385. Even though they were offered with a manual only, they're tied for the quickest 0 to 60 here at 4 seconds flat, and weighing a little over 3,100 pounds, they'd probably be a hell of a lot of fun to drive on windy roads. Although they have more curves than a C4, I used to not be a fan of how they looked, but in the past years, I've seen some really clean ones that changed my mind. You're kind of limited on the front, but you can make the back look really thick.
I was like, damn, what you doing out here with all this ass? Double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon, hella ass, the sun is still out.
The final car for the list of cheap-ish 400 horsepower American cars is the 05 to 13 C6 Corvette Stingray. The 05s and 7s had an LS2 making 400 even, and the 08s and 13s had LS3s making 430. They came in 4-speed autos or 6-speed manuals and hit a 4.2 or 4 flat 0 to 60 depending on the transmission. They sound like pure freedom, the rear storage is huge, the targa tops give you the convertible feel without jeopardizing looks, and they usually only cost between $22,000 and $29,000.
perfection.
Yeah, the bodywork isn't the strongest, they have a cobalt steering wheel, and most people can't take the interior materials, but these are still amazing value for the performance. An honorable mention for the list is the 03 and 04 Mustang SVT Cobra with 390 horsepower. I have it on the list because with very minor mods, you could easily get the extra 10 horsepower you need to get it up to 400. These are pretty hard to find, but they're usually posted between 20 and 30,000. Although I'm not sure if I would pay that much money for one of these instead of one of the other cars on the list. I do love them, and a lot of people say they're the king of supercharger wine. Let me know in the comments which of these is your favorite, and maybe try to guess which one's mine. If you're new to the channel, I upload American car news and content like this every week. If you have any questions or there's something you'd like to see, leave a comment or shoot me a DM on Instagram. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every one of you. I'll see you next week. Have a great day.